Hello and welcome to this unit, Higher Education System. In this video, we'll discuss two things, value education and environment education. This, I would say, is one of the easiest unit in this particular whole higher education system, and if you use common sense, I think you'll be able to answer questions on the value education and environment education. So let's get started. First, it's important to understand what are values and why do we need to impart value education. So there are multiple definitions of values, but I would say one or two keywords that can describe values would be one, guiding principles, and second, positive action. So let's take a look at a few definitions that I've put together for you. So one is that it's ultimately the guiding principles that lead to desirable behavioral and positive patterns. So if as an individual you have to choose and you have to take a decision and there are multiple choices that you have to make, what is it that can guide you, right? How do you connect your thoughts, feelings and emotions that leads to positive action? Those are really your values, the guiding principles which help you make a decision and help you take a positive decision or positive action. So this is about values. Now, why is there need? Why is there increasingly this need? One, there could be a few concerns that our values are eroding away. Second, increased in competition. So there are a list of factors and here are those factors. One, the competitive mindset. So the world is getting increasingly competitive, whether it's students, parents or teachers, everybody is very competitive today. So how do we make sure that in this competitive environment, we achieve the results, but we make sure that the means to achieve the ends are right? That means we achieve results in the right manner, in the right way. Second, there's this concern that the values are deteriorating or there is degeneration of values. So how do we hold to our values, right? Our age-old values which are good even today. Third, in today's global world, there is this whole thing of traditional versus modern. So while whatever is modern sounds cool, but it is important to understand that for developing countries like India, where you work with people from different ethnicities, where you work from people across the world, where you have students from different nations, it's important to have a balance between tradition and modernity. And the youth of our country should not really see everything traditional as bad or everything modern as good. So there are age-old traditions. If you look at the Indian society, tolerance of dissonance, right? Harmony and really taking care of your environment. These were really our values which are age-old. So I think we should stick to these values still, where we should tolerate people from a different environment and we should really have harmony between all the citizens of the country and between the environment and the humans as well. So that is one aspect. Globalization. So globalization means now people say it's a flat world, right? So I worked with an organization where I was leading a team where people were from different backgrounds, from different states of the country. Our business partners were from Ireland, the head office was in US and China, etc., etc. So ultimately what happens is that in this kind of an environment, it is important to distinguish really what is your culture and how to become really, pluricultural. So it's important that in today's complex world of multi-cultures, right, it's important that we have values which determine how we take decisions. Also diversity and inclusion. So I mean, India, we've always talked about that, India, you have unity in diversity. So ours is a very diverse country. There are people, multiple languages, so multilingual, multicultural and multi-religious, right? People follow different religions. So how do we make sure that we have a democratic and a diverse society where the differences and the different values, are really respected, right, of different people? And so in increasingly diverse world, how do we stay inclusive? If you look at our environment, it really becomes our duty that we become sensitive to environment rather than, recklessly exploiting the environment to our advantage, right? In today's social media, if you see our personal life, social media has made such an impact and really is so intrusive. But how do we be there on social media, but at the same time, how do we distinguish between somebody who is probably propagating derogatory information, about a particular gender or about a particular set of society, a certain set of people? So how do we make sure that our values, we stick by the values that are in our constitution and really respect each other and stay away from any of these prejudices? You also have increased crime and violence and so on. So these are all the reasons which makes really a strong case for imparting value education. And not just that, if you look at our background, if you look at the previous recommendations, whether it's in the National Policy of Education or different commissions have been there where it has been recommended that we impart value education right from the school level to all our citizens of the country. So Education Commission in 1966 said we should introduce social, moral and spiritual values in school curriculum. National Policy of Education 86, it said, how do we become a more science-based society? How do we remove the intolerance? How we become more tolerant of different people, right? How do we make sure there is no violence? How do we reduce the superstitions, superstitious beliefs that we have, right? So really upholding our social, cultural and scientific principles to make India secular, democratic and a progressive nation. The National Curriculum Framework for School, that also talked about that focus to bring back ethics and how do we stay connected with the ethical, the social and the spiritual values. And it was about integration of all of this in the curriculum. And there was also National Curriculum Framework, which strongly advocated values like cooperation. How do we cooperate among each other, different states, people from different castes, religions, whatever, different diverse backgrounds, right? How do we respect for human rights, which is in our constitution, right? How do we become tolerant and really resolve our conflicts very peacefully? So these are all the steps that were taken in the past and the recommendations made to include value education into our education system. So finally, if you look at the aims of value education, considering all this, there are various aims of value education. One, this is again what I just mentioned. One, to make sure how we used to have in the ancient era, the holistic education. How do we make sure there is holistic development happening while addressing the head and the heart? Revisiting values and making everyone aware of the eroding values, creating balance between child and community, and being social conscience, right? How do we have social conscience? How do we have harmony and peace with self? So these are a few aims of value education. Also, if you look at the types of values, there is the human value, since we are all humans. So there are certain behaviors, right? Human behaviors. Since we stay in a particular country and country has a particular constitution, there are certain constitutional values, right, that we have to adhere to. So the constitutional rule. Social value, because we all are living in a society, there are certain rules how you behave in a society, how do you take certain decisions. So how do we consider those type of value? Vocational values, as a professional, there are certain work ethics, right? There are certain behaviors, right? So how do we take care of that? Your religious value as well as aesthetic value. So these are the different types of values and the area of value. Also, as a faculty, as a teacher, how do we impart this education? Because it's not easy. You cannot really teach somebody ethics or values, so to speak. But how do we make sure that whatever domain we are teaching, we are developing that awareness, right, of values, so that whatever decisions we take, right, these decisions are considering certain guiding principles. So there could be certain decisions that some of the methods are decision starter. Sometimes you can have a healthy decision where there are people from who are having very different opinions, but how you any controversial topic, how do you make them see both sides of that issue? How do you make sure that ultimately whatever decisions that they're recommending is ethical and really living by the values of human value or constitutional value? How do you help them think critically about certain distinctions, right? How they should be aware about when they take a decision, what could be the different consequences, what can be the impact on people? how can they be open to different perspectives, right? Rather than having a one-sided view, how they can be really holistic individuals who can understand both sides of the story and really look at everything on those both sides, and how do they make really a value judgment about things. So this is all about value education. And so let's switch gears now a little bit. Let's talk about environmental education. So like I mentioned, that making all the citizens of this country sensitive to the environment, and making them aware that we need to protect our environment for us to continue enjoying it, and also for future generations. How do we really have a sustainable environment, right, which is sustainable over the long term? And for that, there are certain objectives that have been laid out, and these are really the global objectives across, not just in India, from awareness to participation. So awareness is just basic understanding of the different environment problems that we are having, and the individual, making aware that individuals and social groups realize that okay, we become sensitive to the environment, the total environment, and the problems that surround it. Second, knowledge, to really gain a variety of experience and really understanding of environment and what things impact the environment positively or negatively. Then developing attitudes, right? Social groups or individuals developing attitude and really acquiring a set of values and feelings of concern for the environment that we stay in. That's your attitude. You also have skills. Do you have the skills? How do we make sure that we individuals and social groups acquire the skills to identify and also resolve or solve environment problems, whether it's air pollution or whatever different types of problems. Also participation. So we need participations from individuals and social groups, right? So that they understand the opportunity, they understand the need, and really start working together toward the resolution of these environmental problems. It could be our rivers, it could be our air pollution, or anything like that. If we talk about specifically to Indian environmental education, I think it has evolved, and there were a couple of decisions taken by the government. So for example, the 42nd amendment in the constitution, it made the responsibility of the state government. It said it is the responsibility of the state governments to protect and improve the environment and safeguard the forests and wildlife of the country. So this is the 42nd amendment in the constitution. So if it's a constitutional law, of course you have to adhere to it. Second, the national policy on education, it said that there is paramount need to create consciousness of the environment, and it should be something which should permeate all ages. That means irrespective whether you are a child, whether you are an adult, whether you are somebody who is 60 years old, it's important for all of us to be conscious about our environment. And third, the Honorable Supreme Court of India in 1991, they made environment education compulsory across all levels of education, so whether primary, secondary, tertiary. So it said it is extremely vital and it should be made compulsory, the environment for education. In fact, we have certain articles in our constitution. So article 48A talks about that the state should endeavor to protect and improve the environment, safeguard the forests and wildlife, according to article 48A. And whereas the article 51A says it shall be the duty of every citizen of India to protect and improve the natural environment, including forests, lakes, rivers, and wildlife, and to have compassion for living creatures. So this is really what the evolution of Indian environment education, and how certain articles and certain amendments mandate it, that it becomes the states and individuals' responsibility to take care of the environment. So that's it about environment education. Like I said, this is not very difficult. You just have to remember a couple of these articles and really understand the basics of this. So thanks for watching this video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.